Welcome back to the Dear Katie podcast. This is Katie Koestner. I am the primary host of the Dear Katie podcast, and we are so delighted to have you take this journey with us on our weekly podcast episodes. I just want to remind everyone to do great self-care. Thriving is part of the purpose of this podcast, and we definitely want you to take a break at any time. Warm bath, fresh air, walk a dog, have a bite of chocolate, whatever you need to do good care for yourself. Just as a reintroduction, if you're not familiar with me, I am the woman who was on the cover of Time magazine at age 18 as the first in history to speak out nationally and publicly as the victim of date rape. And HBO made a film about me, and I went on to become the executive director of the Take Back the Night Foundation. We are the oldest, largest global movement on sexual violence in all forms for all people in the world. So we encourage you to visit our website for lots more information. So I'm going to turn it over to our hosts and our guests for today. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Dear Katie podcast. We are so delighted that you continue on with this survivor's journey, healing, processing each and every episode at your own pace. I always like to remind everyone, take a break if you need to. Self-care is of paramount importance. And we are so excited to host Tracy DeTomasi. I got it.
You got it.
On the show today. And Tracy's done so much for 25 years in this field. And I can't wait to hear all about it and teach you all what we can learn from Tracy. She is a licensed clinical social worker and has worked in the field of gender-based violence for, as I said, 25 years. She is the CEO of Callisto and brings innovative technology as a solution to addressing sexual assault. Callisto is a national nonprofit organization leveraging cutting-edge technology to empower survivors of sexual violence. Callisto's encrypted platform enables campus survivors to securely document their assault, discover if their perpetrator has harmed others, and explore their options in terms of reporting and other forms of support. This helps survivors process their experiences and also increases the likelihood that serial perpetrators will be held accountable. My goodness, what important work, Tracy. Thank you so much. I can't wait to learn where you grew up and how you got started.
Yeah, thank you so much. I've been listening to your podcast for a while, and so I'm excited to be here.
Good. So did you grow up, are you in California or?
No, I actually am in Chicago. And I grew up about an hour and a half outside of Chicago, across the lake in a really rural town in Michigan.
Okay.
So if I'm outside of Chicago, I say I'm from Chicago. If I'm in Chicago, I say I'm from Michigan.
Nice. Well, Michigan's a unique place. It's got, I think, such diverse populations and cities that with like their own distinct personalities, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've spoken there a lot. You got Ann Arbor with one whole, then we got Detroit. So and then you go up to the top, the north. It's really a unique place. But were you a public school person? Were you?
Yeah, I went to a very small public school where we had less than 400 people in my high school. I had a graduating class of less than 100, and it was not 9 towns. Nine towns.
It was 400 high school students.
Yeah. So it was very rural, lots of farmland. It was right on Lake Michigan, so it was a beautiful place to grow up. Most people that I went to kindergarten with, I graduated with. So very, very unique. And that I've lived in the cities, different cities all over the country since then.
Okay, cool. And so what were you doing before Callisto?
Well, immediately before Callisto, I had opened my own consulting company with a couple of friends, and we were actually trying to build virtual reality training. So training for anti-sexual harassment and diversity, equity, inclusion, belonging using virtual reality headsets. And so we had started to develop that. And our first big contract was in March of 2020. And so the pandemic just killed it.
Oh, no.
Yeah. So, that was the first time I'd finally gotten away from gender-based violence work, although it was still anti-sexual harassment, but it got away from nonprofits to kind of do trainings at a corporate level that really impacted the culture in a different level. And so I did do, kind of normal DEIB type of consulting during the pandemic, which was really great, and using a really trauma-informed approach, and really teaching people how to talk about these issues, because whether it's gender, whether it's race, whether it's sexual orientation, disability, a lot of times people come to those conversations and they don't fully understand how to talk about it. And having worked in gender-based violence for my whole career, when you have to talk about really taboo subjects, you got really comfortable talking about uncomfortable things. And so that was just a niche that I had, that I wanted to do something different with. And then Callisto kind of pulled me back into that gender-based violence and nonprofit lens.
Yeah. So what's the origin story of Callisto then? And tell us more about it.
Yeah. So Callisto was founded by Jessica Ladd, and in 2011, and she actually founded it as Sexual Health Innovations. And she was really building technology to help with sexual health. And so there were a lot of different projects that she was working on, and Callisto just happened to be one of those projects. And in 2015, she got a grant from google.org to really develop Callisto, and that's really more of our origin story. So she had the idea of, how do we really change sexual assault on college campuses? She was a survivor herself of sexual assault while she was in college. I can say that with permission because she has a whole TED Talk about it. I highly recommend watching it. And she wanted to figure out how to solve this issue. And so once she got the grant, she started building technology that was to be sold to Title IX offices. And she did that technology, which was called Callisto Campus, functioned for a few years, and she got a lot of feedback. It was the matching system was something very new, and she got a lot of feedback on it. And in 2019, we sunsetted that technology and started what we call Callisto Vault now. And so what Callisto Vault does, and I think that this is what pulled me back into gender-based violence and what pulled me back into nonprofit, because it does something so unique and so revolutionary, is that it lets people find out if their perpetrator has harmed somebody else without them having to publicly disclose. So our technology is end-to-end encrypted, and for non-technical people like me, what that means is that it's the information that survivors put into our technology is encrypted before it hits our servers. So it's saved in the encrypted state. So it's highly, highly secure. And what happens is that a survivor, if they're wanting to know if their perpetrator has harmed somebody else, they can go in and they put in the name, or they put in the state where the assault occurred. And that's because state laws vary on the definition of sexual assault. They put in the unique identifier of the perpetrator, so the perpetrator's social media handles, email address, phone number. There's about 12 different criteria they can use, and they can put in as many as they know. And then our matching system runs on that. And so if two people put in the same Instagram account, for example, there's going to be a match. They're not going to know right away. It's not like a dating site. It's not like Tinder where you're going to say, like, there's a match. And we don't tell people right away that there's a match for safety reasons. But we get notified. And within the Callisto team, we can't see very much information. We do not see the perpetrator's name. We do not see the survivor's name. But we see any kind of accessibility needs they have, where the assault occurred, and what school they are connected with. Because our technology right now is being used in academia. So anybody with a .edu email address in the US and its territories have free access. And so what happens when there's a match is that we assign that case to a legal options counselor, who is a trauma-informed, confidential advocate, who then reaches out to the survivors separately. And they invite them to participate in a conversation if they want to. We put the survivors in the driver's seat the whole way. And so if the survivor wants to meet with the legal options counselor, they set up a meeting, and then they tell the legal options counselor what happened. And that's the first time that they really have to describe what happened to them, because we know that can be so re-traumatizing. And then they ask what their options are. Most survivors, when they're assaulted, have no idea the difference between a criminal system and the civil system, or Title IX, or whatever the case may be, or what the legal definition of assault is. And so it really helps to answer a survivor's question, any questions that they might have about how to get help. And then if it's safe to do so after going through all the risks, the legal option counselor will work to connect those survivors so those survivors can pursue healing and justice, whatever that means for them, which is different for every survivor. So we don't investigate the crimes. We don't report. We don't report to police. We don't report to Title IX. But we are really about empowering survivors through that connection, because we know that 90% of sexual assaults on college campuses are committed by serial perpetrators who on average offend 6 times while in college. So we know that if we can connect survivors, and while 1 assault is too many, but if we can connect them after 2 assaults rather than 6, we can reduce college sexual assault by 59%.
Wow. Hi, this is Katie Koestner, and I wanted to remind all of our listeners about the free National Sexual Assault Legal Hotline. We at Take Back the Night have assembled an incredible team of attorneys, trauma-informed, who truly believe survivors and want to support their journeys in healing and finding justice. The Get Justice Hotline is 567-SHATTER, or feel free to fill out a form on the Take Back the Night website, share your story, let the attorneys know what's going on, and they will get back to you as soon as possible with all of your legal options. That is a service we are delighted to provide through Take Back the Night. Tracy, that's incredible. I was going to back up and ask, so how do every college has this? Or?
Anybody with a .edu email address has free access. So every college in the U.S. and its territories has free access to this, whether you're a student, a professor, an alumni. If you still have access to your .edu email address, you have access to it.
Okay, great. So it's then the whole program right now is mostly focused on academia, as you said. Mm-hmm. And then I love the idea of providing so many options and connecting with the others. Is it the case the counselor, the options person only comes in if there's a match between Correct. 2 or more? Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Yeah, because it's really to facilitate that connection between the matches. You can find those services in other places if you want to, just for your individual self. But having 2 people name the same person changes that case. It changes your options and it changes your healing.
Yeah, I think it gives you, plus it makes you, although it's daunting to, hear the numbers you just mentioned, I think it's really helpful to know you're not alone. It's not you, it's this perpetrator who keeps going after more and more people. And do you track, do they come back do you ever get to know what the outcomes are and if there was justice received?
Yeah, justice is a difficult word, right? Justice takes forever in our systems if it happens at all. And so we are actually implementing surveys this month to be able to track on a long-term basis of what the outcomes are, because somebody may have matched with somebody and they weren't ready to report yet. Or maybe they're never ready to report, and that's okay. But we will be able to have some kind of long-term longitudinal study of what the outcomes are and how it impacts their not only justice, but also their mental health, like their healing and their justice, and to see, did this inspire them to report? They may have already reported, and this may have helped their case. And so there's a lot of different outcomes that we are looking forward to seeing what those are as we continue to grow.
Nice. That's awesome. And I guess my other practical question is, do you have how many people have used it so far?
Yeah, we launched this tool in the fall of 21.
Okay.
We were supposed to launch in the fall of 2020. Of course, people weren't on college campuses. And so we launched to a select group of schools in 2021. And so by the end of our first year in our pilot, we had about 40 schools using the tool. We did have matches, and so that showed us that we were ready to launch nationally. And so in October of 2023, so just over a little over a year ago, we launched nationally, so that anybody with a .edu email address had free access. So we haven't fully pushed it out in a big marketing campaign yet, but with that, we still have about 2,000 users right now, and so with minimal marketing and really, organic word of mouth marketing, we've gotten quite a few users, and we do have matches, and we have matches across the country. So that means that one survivor is on one coast, one survivor is on another coast, and they can still match, because it doesn't matter where the perpetrator is located or if the perpetrator was connected to their school. The only thing that we use the school for is to gain access to our system, but the perpetrator can be anybody.
Wow. And I can only imagine some perpetrators might, have left one school and then go to another and commit more crimes.
Absolutely. That's how they evade justice, is that they get a Title IX case investigating, and then they just drop out of school, and typically that Title IX case goes away.
Right. Exactly. No record ever made. Another question then is the funding, because you're a nonprofit. So do you get grants, or how are you getting business?
Yeah, funding has been a little...
Tracy.
Right, exactly. Yeah. Funding has been a little bit of a struggle. If you look at our website, you'll see that in September, we almost closed because of funding. And the amazing thing is that it shows the power of collective action with survivors, is that survivors said, absolutely not. You're not going anywhere. We need this service. And so we get grant funding. Our main funder is through Arnold Ventures. They really believe in us, and they didn't want us to close. And so that was one of the main reasons that we didn't close, is because they were able to offer a very significant grant to us, and we're continuing to work with them. But we also have funding through individual donors. We've got some really generous individual donors who have really funded us throughout the years. Some of them are, fund us at $250,000 or more a year, and some are like $5, and so any amount of funding from individual donors is really important to us, because yes, we go after grants. We do not have government grants. It's mostly private foundations.
What is the Arnold one you mentioned? Is
Arnold Ventures? They're a private foundation.
Are they? Is Arnold like
it's the name of the family name.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. And do they have a special passion for your issue, or
they have? A lot of the things they do, a lot of different things, but one of the things that they have taken a unique look at Callisto is that they focus on criminal justice and how can we improve systems in a long-term kind of way. And so obviously with sexual assault, criminal justice is terrible. 0.25% of rapists ever get behind bars. And so that's abysmal. And so they're looking for different solutions, and they know that these have to be long-term solutions. Changing the criminal justice system is not something that's going to happen overnight.
Hi, everybody. It's Katie Koestner. Just a quick interruption. We want you to know that there is an entire shop full of cool merch on the Take Back the Night website to support your own healing journey, that of someone you care about. There are t-shirts, there's bracelets, there's glow-in-the-dark stuff. There's all kinds of unique special edition from our artist series as well. So please take a look. If it's a holiday or a special occasion or just a gift to yourself, support Take Back the Night through your purchase.
And so they really see us as a way to connect survivors, to help survivors, but then to get to that accountability piece. And that accountability piece is going to take some time. But once we get to that accountability piece, we'll hold more and more perpetrators accountable, and we'll see how we can change the systems to better support survivors and to better hold perpetrators accountable.
I don't know if you knew this, Tracy, but when I was in college and going through all my situation at Brown University, because this was in the media at the same time, my case, and they called it they called it the castration wall. But essentially it was the fledgling concept of Callisto, meaning women could just write up on the walls the name of their perpetrator, and then they would do like hash marks to see how many others like also were victimized by the same person. So it was pretty powerful, and I remember it so well.
Yeah, I think that, we get scrappy as women, right?
Yeah.
We want to find different solutions. And I think that that was common among so many colleges. In the height of Me Too, or at the beginning of Me Too, there was a Google Doc that was called the Shitty Media Men list, something like that. The problem with all of those is that, the Shitty Media Men list got shut down for defamation.
Oh.
And one of the people named won that case. And so the person creating the list ended up having to pay millions of dollars for creating that list. And so that's happening, like our generation did it on bathroom walls. The new generation is doing it on Instagram accounts. You don't know who's behind that Instagram account. You don't know how they're using your information. There's an anonymity with social media that can be really powerful and can also be really problematic. And that's why we are trying to take away all of those factors of, we're vetting certain things. It's all encrypted. Nobody can get your information, and it doesn't go public until you want it to go public. And it's still the survivor's choice for that. All of the information with the legal option counselor is protected under confidentiality, and we're not reporting. So there's no false accusations. There's none of that. And it's really about finding those other people, because even in that bathroom wall, you're just a tick mark. You still don't have the identity of the other person to really talk to.
Yeah. Sometimes I think what I remember, Tracy, about that was they would write up like little notes to each other about that person and how they, like what their methods were, the rapist, how they, if they'd used just like drugs, or if, they got them drunk, or, whatever it was. But they would sometimes write little hints to each other, like, be careful, this is what their technique is.
Yeah.
But I think I like what you said. We get really scrappy when we don't know what else to do. And there's so many different ways. It also made me think, we also think creatively about how we're going to ever solve this problem. And a book I read is by an author, now deceased, Sherry Tepper. And it was called The Gate to Women's Country. And I loved it so much because I read it in college for women's studies class, like intro. And the whole twist, I'm going to give it away, spoiler alert, but I loved it because it was all about this community, and it was the women living in these cities protected with walls, and they couldn't ever really leave. And the warrior men were out there killing each other off to protect these women. And that's what you start to, like, at the outset of the book. And when the women, once a year, the men would come in and impregnate the women to populate the species, right? And then when boys were born, they could choose at age 12, if they wanted to go out and be warriors, or if they wanted to stay and be eunuchs, and like serve inside the city. And what the women were doing, though, is only mating with the eunuchs. They were cleverly breeding the rape and pillage and war out of the society genetically.
That's so brilliant. That's brilliant.
Yeah, it was just like all these things that I find fascinating. And there's lots of great movies and obviously clever writings. I even wrote, here's another one that you might not know. I wrote, because I've been speaking so often, I even wrote some essays myself for Huffington Post. And one of them, they're little short ones, and I called one Sticky. And it was this, and it's all real stuff. And so this was the story of a hot September day, and the vice president of student affairs picked me up from the Los Angeles airport in his car to drive me to speak. And he'd been bringing me to speak years and years, like 8 times on a school in the Boston, Massachusetts area. And then he left and he moved out to this other college. And finally, in the car ride, he told me that he was guilty of rape in college himself.
Wow.
Yeah, like it's shocking, the work that we do, Tracy. I love it because it's, it's just changing the world like one little bit at a time. And think about like that guy had to take 8 years to get up the gumption to confess.
Yeah.
And he kept doing, probably I was his guilt,
Yeah.
bringing me to speak, trying to assuage his own issue. But I think the way Callisto is working at the problem is so smart. And I also, we're brainstorming too, you and I, as we do the podcast. But I'm thinking there's got to be a way maybe to expand it beyond the EDUs.
We're working on that.
Yeah, I'm glad. I was going to ask you. So, how are we going to do that? How are you going to do it?
It always comes down
on the team.
Right. No, we need everybody on the team. It comes down to money. In resources and fundraising, the more we can fundraise, and we are actually in the process, and we should have it done by June, of creating a business plan of how to expand beyond .edus. And that will hopefully be kind of more of a social enterprise where we can have different types of companies, unions, membership organizations that pay for their members to have access to really offset the costs of our philanthropic giving. Because obviously that's always an issue, and we always want the services to be free for survivors. I just don't believe that survivors should have to pay for the crime that was committed against them.
Right.
And so we want to make sure that somebody else is paying for that and not the survivors. And we've had so much interest. If you look at our Instagram page, which you can follow at Callisto, you'll see people of like, I can't wait for it to come here. I can't wait for it to come here. I wish that I had this. And, internationally too, like I've spoken to people in Canada and the UK and Poland and Peru and Colombia and all over the place, because it's needed, and it doesn't exist anywhere else in the world in the way that we're doing it, and really being this neutral third party nonprofit that's working on this matching that isn't just this list somewhere in somebody's, on somebody's computer. It really is fully encrypted. And I think that that's what makes us really unique. And if you have listeners who are really passionate about this, who want to help us expand quicker, it really comes down to resources.
Mm-hmm. As does many things. Unfortunately, things that often solve problems aren't the most lucrative, because sometimes the problem is more profitable than the solution. Exactly. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for continuing to take the journey on the Dear Survivor podcast. A quick note, we are 100% volunteer at the podcast and at Take Back the Night. Your donations, your generosity helps us do what we do on such a shoestring budget. And we would be so grateful if this show is helping you through your journey and you are passing it along to others you care about. Please visit the Take Back the Night website and donate and support our cause and our mission to end sexual violence and support survivors. Thank you. Oh, I was also going to say, if you could share, we were talking just before we started recording about your Take Back the Night experience.
Yeah.
Since we're all about Take Back the Night here. So what was that? Where was that?
So
was it in Michigan?
It was in Michigan. So I went to grad school to get my master's of social work at the University of Michigan. And I think it was so long ago, but there was some kind of Take Back the Night event. I think that I had to go for a class, or it was like an option to go like for a social work class. And so I think it was in Detroit. And so a couple of friends and I went to this Take Back the Night. We did the march. And then, it ended with the vagina monologues. And it was the first time I saw the vagina monologues. And it was this eye-opening experience that I just still remember some of, like, just hearing survivors tell their story for the first time. And I was in social work, and I knew that I wanted to do something good to help people. I wanted to be a therapist, but I didn't really have a whole lot of direction. I had worked in a group home with adolescent boys, all of whom had been sexually abused, but were also abusing others. And so I started my career actually working with offenders. And I witnessed the speakers and not really knowing a lot about sexual violence at that time, to be honest. Like, I had not experienced sexual violence at that point. And other than like being a woman walking around the world. And it was just heart-wrenching and empowering and hopeful. And it just gave me this understanding. And then when I had the opportunity to do an internship working with adolescent sex offenders, I took it. Because I felt, and people were like, why would you want to work with offenders? And it was because if I can prevent that person's story that I heard at that Take Back the Unite event, and if I can do that by helping treat the problem, which is the offender, then you're going to prevent any more of those stories from happening and those experiences from happening. And I don't think I definitely didn't think about it that clearly then. as I can, and with 25 years of thought behind it. But it was absolutely a turning point in my own personal history and my career that has gotten me to here.
Yeah, I think that's one of the magical things about Take Back the Night. It's so unique. It's like a hodgepodge of experiential stuff, right? That it's so memorable because you're doing something and it's not a screen. Obviously, it's been around well before the screens. And I think, I like things very much that help us think about this multisensory and like solutions like what you're doing with problems like that are really concrete and you can see exactly what's happening and putting two people together sounds glorious and letting them help one another. And I think that's kind of what events are in a way. It's like the events are the Callisto on the ground.
Absolutely.
They just don't get to say and the name of their rapist necessarily at the event because, let's all raise our hands if it was, this person. But I'm thinking that might be another way we can get out the word for Callisto is at some of our events so they know about it.
That would be amazing. Because I think that there's like such a stepping stone, right? Without Take Back the Night, there would be no Me Too.
Right. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think it's every little thing made a difference. And I always know there's a reason why it was me. Like I always say, Tracy, there's only one variable in my case. One debatable variable that it was distilled to can a woman go out with a guy and he pays for dinner and she still has the right to have him back to her room and say no. Like it was pretty darn simple. But I say that meaning like I'm white and heterosexual and a virgin and Christian and straight A student and second oldest college in the country and like a second chair clarinet in the state and 12th fastest IM swimmer. Like I was like the resume. Right. So there's nothing you could debate. I wasn't even drinking. Like I had 2 sips of champagne at the dinner because he bought it and I had never had alcohol before. Like I think everything matters that we do and it's exponentially getting bigger and better. And I'm so grateful. Even Take Back the Night morphs into different things. We do yoga events now and bike events and just making it more accessible. It's outside of the university and it's global. So we just did something for Antigua, believe it or not, and Kenya. And it's really, I love it. I love that you're doing international work with Callisto as well. It's so important. Because the voices and the stories and the justice make such a big difference. Another thing I always say too, Tracy, is you don't see a headline where it was therapy session changes multi-billion-dollar company, survive like that. Never. Therapy and healing, unfortunately, aren't headline material,
right?
But lawsuits and criminal justice are, lawsuits of $394 million paid by XYZ University, or that changes our celebrities being held accountable and. those things, that's what we pay attention to. So I try to push hard for things that go poof.
Agreed. Yeah. And there's so, I mean, we have to tackle this at so many different angles, right? And that's why we all need to work together. We need those big moments and those events. And, you know, and it also shows to, like, when Me Too happened, everybody said, well, why haven't people been speaking out? We need to be the voice for the voiceless. And I always have hated that phrase, the voice for the voiceless.
Okay, you pretty people.
Because people like you have had a voice.
Yeah,
You've given everybody microphones across the country for decades now.
Yeah,
people have a voice. Who's listening?
Yeah.
We need to give an ear to the earless, right?
Yeah. I like that too. I also think, I think I get frustrated with the Me Too because I feel like it wasn't inclusive feeling, or is not. It feels like a very expensive club of well-off women who have, are on screens all the time. And I that's what I like about Take Back the Night, especially, is there's no screen time.
Yeah.
There's real time. We're breathing the same air. We're walking around the same streets, and people are listening. We yell, we chant, we hold up signs, we get tossed at stuff like out windows, like shut up, and they throw sandwiches at us. Like I love them all.
Well, and I think that's the goal of Callisto too, is that, historically, especially since Me Too, journalists have done this work. Journalists are the ones who started with Me Too and uncovering Harvey Weinstein and Larry Nassar and all of those people. But you have to have a perpetrator or a victim headline worthy, which is awful.
I agree.
Because there's so many that are not headline worthy. It doesn't mean that their experience isn't just as important. And that's what Callisto does, is that we help people find each other that there's no journalist that's ever going to want to find.
Yeah, I love that story too. It's so cool. I'm so inspired now that I know it. I understand it better. The other thing that made me think about the journalism is, since I was interviewed like 200 times, no more, I don't know. But the first one, you may not have known this, I actually had to sign. I wrote my own letter to the editor to send out, because he'd been found guilty and his punishment was not to go in my dorm again for one semester. So I wrote this article, but they didn't publish my name because that had not been yet done in history. So I signed a release of my name at age 18. I'm like, I'm not the one who's embarrassed here. He's in trouble. Like, he's the one who should be shamefaced. So I think naming, having our names, feeling not alone, all of that is what we're all about. That's the podcast purpose, is even if we're listening in different parts of the world to survivors and folks like you, we're not alone. Like, we see all this awesomeness of our listener base. So clearly people are finding it helpful, which I think is, hopefully they'll take that next step, or maybe they'll use Callisto if they have a .edu. So fantastic. Can you think of anything else you should share with the listeners, Tracy?
If you want to learn more, our website is projectcallisto.org, or you can follow us on Instagram, which is @Callisto. And if you want to sign up, callistovault.org, which you can also navigate through our website, and spread the word. If you want to get involved, let us know. Send us a DM on Instagram. You can email us at contact@projectcallisto.org. We need people to spread the word. There's an online toolkit for free that has brochures and posters and things that you can print if you're interested. And if you can, donate, because that every donation helps us as well. And we're grateful for everyone that comes through. So this is really a grassroots thing that we need to make sure that people know about. A couple years ago, one survivor said at least one person in every friend group needs to know about Callisto, because that's who you tell first. And so if you have a friend that's been assaulted, you can give them a place to go, especially if they're not really wanting to report yet.
Yeah.
Or ever.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Tracy, for being a guest. And for our listeners, wow, now you have another avenue for learning more about options and seeing if you're not the only one for your perpetrator. And I would, I know we have listeners who are victims of child abuse and also, intimate partner violence. And I still think it's worthy to think about using a solution or an option like Callisto, no matter who it was, because you don't know where they're going next and, what they might do somewhere else that you might not even know about. So thank you again, listeners, for continuing. Together, we will definitely be stronger in our survivors' journey. So take good care. And also, I always mention our legal support hotline, which is not the same as Callisto. It simply will allow you to learn about your criminal and civil and all the kinds of legal options that are out there and how that process works. And we have free, fabulous, trauma-informed attorneys who are staffing that. So please don't hesitate to also consider that as an option. Otherwise, until the next episode, take good care and be well. Thank you again, everybody, for joining another episode of the Dear Katie podcast. I hope very much you found today's episode helpful, empowering, and a way to take another step in that long journey toward healing and supporting those we care about, learning about sexual violence prevention, and also survivor support. For those of you who don't know, again, the Take Back the Night website has tons of great resources, books, self-care options, cool merch. If you're feeling like you need a wearable, we have great t-shirts. Of course, we would love it if you follow along on our free newsletter with news and events going on around the country and even around the globe. And finally, don't forget to like us and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. You'll find our entire community popping up here and there, and recaps of our podcast episodes as well. So together we shatter the silence, and together we end the violence. Take care.